Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, January 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The national championship game against Notre Dame in 4 days, the game against Michigan in 317 days. Got a chance to talk to Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles, Ohio State's offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, on Tuesday. On this show, you're going to be hearing from Chip Kelly some of the most interesting things that he had to say. And there was a lot of interesting takeaways from that Chip Kelly interview. Let's start with a little bit of a look back at the Cotton Bowl, what Texas did to take Jeremiah Smith away from the Buckeyes, and how Ohio State's offensive coordinator is going to approach something like that.
Yeah, I think they rolled some things to Jeremiah, to try to take him away. There's some bracket coverages and guy inside, guy outside, guy over the top. And Will did a great job of diagnosing what they were doing, and I think Cornell had a huge game for us. Meck had 5, Cornell had 7. I thought the tight ends, the combination of G and Will did a great job. And then obviously the back out of the backfield. So the beauty of what we have here is that we have more than one weapon. So I think the quarterback has to make really good decisions on what they're trying to take away and then adjust accordingly. And I think Will did a really good job of that.
One of the plays that could have been a very big deal in that Cotton Bowl game against Texas that ended up just sort of being a funny side story was Will Howard taking that QB power on 4th and 2 and tripping and falling. He picked up the first down. He could have had a touchdown, but he tripped and fell instead. No one really touched him. Of course, the Buckeyes finished that drive with a touchdown and the winning game. So now you can go look back and laugh at it. But Chip Kelly said over the headsets, he was kind of giving Will Howard a little bit of a hard time about tripping on that run. So he was talking about that, and then you'll hear a little bit of back and forth with Austin Ward.
He can't respond, so I can say whatever I want. It's kind of like being married. It's reversed. Reversed. So,
do you take that opportunity much to maybe ever lighten the mood, or?
It all depends on the situation. I can't really pinpoint one thing or another. It was just, that was a huge play for us. It was 4th and 2. We had to convert, keep the drive alive. I talked to him, but it wasn't the next play. It was, in between series, we had an opportunity to chat about that. So, because we still had to go down and score. So,
Chip Kelly is much more than just the Ohio State's offensive coordinator. He's also a good friend of Ryan Day, going back to when Day was just a kid, basically, entering college at New Hampshire. So what is Chip Kelly's thoughts on Ryan Day and the last month of Ryan Day's life? Go back to mid-December, and boy, it was a very different time around the Ohio State program and around Columbus, Ohio, as people were sort of sharing their thoughts about the loss to Michigan and what it might mean moving forward. So how happy is Chip Kelly for Ryan Day and how things have changed in the last month?
Yeah, I am. And I think the one thing that, knowing him for so long, I'm not surprised. I told him a long time ago he was built for this. He understands the gravity of what you have to do to be a head coach here. And I think he's handled it tremendously. He's the same person every day. I think the consistency and how he shows up here every day and what his mission is and how he drives this entire program, coaches, people in the building, players, whatever, is very, very evident. And we get a chance to play one more game, and that's what the mantra had been since the last game of the regular season. We got to keep this group together, and everything he's talked about since that day, we've done. So, we got to continue it.
You saw the Buckeyes use more 12 personnel against Texas. Just as a reminder, when you talk about a number in terms of the personnel grouping on offense, the first number you hear is the number of running backs on the field. The second number you hear is the number of tight ends on the field. So 12 personnel is 1 running back and 2 tight ends. 11 personnel, that would be 1 running back and 1 tight end. And then the wide receivers, just 5 minus whatever the other 2 numbers are. So 1 tight end, 1 running back. That means 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, 2 tight ends would be 2 wide receivers. So there you go. There's your little football terminology nugget for the day. So Chip Kelly was asked about using more 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers against Texas, whether he thought that might be something to do more of against Notre Dame, and what he likes about that.
Yeah, I think it depends on how the other team deploys when you put that in the game. So there's always a response to, we put a personnel grouping in, they have an opportunity to match that personnel, they have an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to play it in this grouping. And then do we think that matchup is favorable to us or is it favorable to them? So, I think when you look at how Notre Dame does it, they're good. And I think it's a that would be an interesting matchup, along with our 11 personnel and along with some of our other personnel groupings. And that's part of the game that goes on within a game. So, but we'll see how they decide that they're going to handle it. And then if it's how we thought it was going to be, then maybe we'll continue that. But if it may not be what we thought it was going to be, and then we say, all right, then that's not probably a personnel grouping we're going to use today.
One of the somewhat surprising storylines on the offense all playoffs long has been the situation at guard, where the Buckeyes have played three different guys between two positions. Luke Montgomery, Austin Siereveld, and Tager Shabola. They have kind of mixed those guys around. You've seen Luke Montgomery at left guard with both Siereveld and Tager Shabola at right guard. You've seen Austin Siereveld at left guard with Tager Shabola at right guard. It's just kind of been a little bit of everything during the course of the playoffs. Now, that changed a little bit against Texas, where Luke Montgomery played every snap of the game at left guard against the Longhorns. So how did Luke Montgomery grade out?
I think Luke did a really nice job. I think part of the rotation part was Austin was banged up a little bit. So, how much could we get from him? And he's a warrior and gave us everything he had. So those decisions on the reps of what we're going to do with those guys will be based upon, where's our health when we get to next Sunday and Monday when we start to talk about depth. But I thought Luke, with extended playing snaps, did a really, really nice job.
When you look at the final four teams in the college football playoff, all of them have one thing in common. All have very good defenses against opponents scoring. Penn State was 8th in the nation in scoring defense. Texas was 4th. Notre Dame, 2nd in the nation in scoring defense, behind only Ohio State. So what kind of challenge is that Notre Dame defense going to present to the Buckeyes?
Yeah, obviously. And I think both teams have proven that, and that's why we're here. But they do an outstanding job, and they've got some real veteran leaders. Cross and Kaiser, I think, have been there. This is year 6 for both those guys. Watts in the secondary has been around for a long time. So they've got depth, up front, second level, and third level. They're really smart. Like, you can watch their communication that goes on during the play, and you can see how in tune they are to what the coaching staff is asking them to do. So that's a huge challenge for us on Monday, going up against a really, really well-coached defense that has some really, really good players that have played a lot of football. I think both teams have guys that have played a lot of football, and that experience has shown through the playoffs.
Sometimes you'll hear coaches talk about how certain mistakes are a little bit excusable. There are some that are just inexcusable mistakes, but there's some where you're willing to kind of overlook it because it's an aggressive mistake. So Will Howard's interception at the start of the third quarter, is that an example of an aggressive mistake that a coach is kind of willing to sort of let go or excuse a little bit?
Yeah, he just didn't see the linebacker underneath in the coverage. He read the top of the coverage really well. He didn't see the underneath part of the coverage. So we discuss it just like we normally do between each series about what just transpired and then what are we going to do next. And the one thing about Will is he owns everything he does. Because if you don't own it, then you're going to make the same mistake again because you don't realize how you did it. And he knew right away. He just didn't see the linebacker. He felt like the top of the coverage was deep enough, and Jeremiah had pushed them off where he could throw that ball into him, but he didn't spot the underneath coverage. So it's something he'll learn from. And hopefully, the one thing I love about Will is he usually doesn't make the same mistake twice. So let's hope he has that out of his system.
Notre Dame's secondary is going to be a big topic of conversation heading into the national championship game. They are missing Benjamin Morrison. He was their best corner. He hurt his hip against Stanford. He's out for the year. So now they're playing a bunch of young guys. Christian Gray is on one side. Leonard Moore, a true freshman, has stepped in and has looked better than you'd expect a true freshman to look, at least through 2 games that Tony Gerderman and I have watched. So what's Chip Kelly's view of the Notre Dame secondary?
Yeah, I think the whole secondary, you look at how much man they play, and the reason they do it is because they can, and no one's really exploited that with them. So I think they all can cover, so it's not like, well, just stay away from him and throw against this guy. I think all of them are really, really skilled. And I think how coordinated it is with the whole group, that they all have an understanding of where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and they do a really good job with it. So I know they did lose a corner early in the season, but they've seemed to just continue to roll on defense, and the statistics will show you that.
The Buckeye coaching staff has sort of been managing things in terms of knowing that it's going to be a long season. They maybe have sort of shifted some of the snap counts and that kind of stuff for guys, managed how they've paced games throughout the course of the season, maybe manage how they call games to a certain degree through the course of the season, knowing that, you're going to probably have to play 16 games if you're going to win the national championship this year. And that's more than any college player has really been asked to play in the past. So knowing now that this is the last game, you don't have another week to save guys for. You don't have another week to save plays for. Does that change anything with their approach to snap counts or game plan or play design or anything else heading into the national championship game?
That's a good question. I don't think we've talked about that one yet, but we certainly don't save things going into games saying, hey, this is a really good deal. Let's not run it because we want to run it 3 or 4 games down the road, because you don't know who you're going to have and what you're going to do. You make your decisions based upon the personnel that's available that week and then what's going to help you win that football game. And those are the same decisions that are being made now. So snap count going into a game, we don't really talk about that. The only time that ever comes up is when you're up and you're starting to think about substituting. So if the score is 42-7 in the third, when are we going to get Donnie out and when are we going to get Seth out? Because you'd hate to lose a guy when the score is 42-7, in a game, because we do have multiple games to play after that. But that's the only time we've really talked about that.
One of the biggest plays of the Cotton Bowl came right before halftime. Texas had just scored to tie the game at 7. Just 29 seconds left. The Buckeyes were backed up at their own 25-yard line. They had a one-play, 75-yard drive. Just a little screen to Travion Henderson that went the distance and really swung the momentum of that game going into halftime. So what went into that play call and that decision there?
Well, honestly, there was 29 seconds to go in the first half and we were on our 25-yard line. So let's see if we can get something here on the first play. If we can, then we'll get into 2-minute mode. But if we can't, then you're probably going to take a knee and go in at halftime. So we thought it was a safe play to run and see if we could pop something. And obviously it worked. But it worked because Trey's a pretty good player. So if you can get him into open spaces like we did, he can stick his foot in the ground and get north and south really, really fast.
Jeremiah Smith had just 1 catch for 3 yards in the Cotton Bowl. That is something that he has really not experienced yet as a college football player. He came in, had some pretty immediate success, and has just sort of sustained that all season long. So how has Jeremiah responded to having a very, very quiet day on a very big stage in the semifinal?
Yeah, he's been great. We practiced yesterday. And he was flying around, excited about the opportunity to go play in a national championship. So he's always a forward-looking guy. What's next? What's the next challenge? And what do we, what do we get to do? And that's kind of what his mindset has been like. And that does speak to his maturity, because he's always, what's the next challenge? And I think that's one of the things I love about him.
Kelly was asked about his reaction to the Jack Sawyer touchdown as it happened. Of course, that big sack and scoop and score that really sealed the win for Ohio State. Thought this was a little interesting to hear him talking about what they were talking about right before it happened.
Just excited. I mean, in that situation to be where that drive was, it's first and goal from the 1, after back-to-back penalties. And then, you're in a 1-score game and they're tying it up. And we're talking about when we get the ball back, how much time is left on the clock, and then what can we do in regulation. And then for that whole series of plays, just kind of watching them unfold and what happened. But for Jack and the impact that he has on this program, and to see that whole thing kind of just out, it was kind of a storybook happening right in front of you. But it was anytime our defense can score or we can return punts for touchdowns, offensive guys get really excited.
Last year when the Buckeyes played Notre Dame, the Irish limited Marvin Harrison to just 3 catches. So is there anything that Chip Kelly sees going back and watching that game on film now that he thinks might be how they approach trying to limit Jeremiah Smith?
I don't think we looked at it that way, but we looked at that game and then we looked at every game they've played this year. So, they've played man in every game they've played. So it's not like they're doing something special in one game over another game. So, and they've played some good receivers. There's some teams they played that have some really talented receivers, and they've done a great job against everybody, whether it's Louisville, SC, people that throw the ball all over the place. They still have done a great job in coverage, and the numbers will tell you that. So, we got to be prepared for all coverages. And that's the other thing they do. They don't just play one coverage. So, they're going to mix it up. They try to keep you off balance. They try to keep the quarterback guessing. They bring different blitzes and attack your pressures in a really good manner. I think Al's background as an NFL guy, being with the Lions and being with the Bengals, has really shown there's a lot of NFL concepts that he's running there. And their players do a great job of adjusting on the fly, too. So, because people try to confuse them and line up in different formations and move and things like that, and they always seem to sort it out. So.
And finally, there has been a lot of conversation about whether the loss to Michigan was ultimately maybe a little bit beneficial to the Buckeyes heading into the playoffs. That's been a narrative that's been discussed. It's certainly something we've discussed as a possibility on some of our shows. Chip Kelly was asked about what he thinks about that narrative, that loss may have ultimately been a little bit beneficial.
I've learned a long time ago as a coach that I'm not into narratives. So, I think we live in a week-to-week world, and that's how we've always approached things. And I think our week-to-week is just, it's the beginning of the week, and what do we do on a Monday? What's a Monday look like? What's a Tuesday look like? What's a Wednesday look like? How's your preparation? All those other things. Then you go play the game, and you got about 20 hours to adjust to what happened, whether it was a win or whether it was a loss, and then you move on to the next game. So the narrative part of it isn't something I think coaches really talk about, that this set up that, to set up this. That's, you guys are the experts at writing narratives. We're just trying to get a first down. So I don't look at that from that perspective. So
we're going to have much more coverage coming up for you this week. You'll get a show getting to hear from Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. We're going to have interviews with Ryan Day and some Ohio State players inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Wednesday. I'll have all sorts of coverage for you from that. Going to drop a couple of Ross Fulton bonus shows in the feed for you as well, looking back at the 2022 and 2023 Ohio State Notre Dame games, shows that we did back at the time, but stuff that might still apply to a certain degree. Looking forward to this Monday's national championship game. Going to have another Ross Fulton schematic breakdown of the Cotton Bowl for you on the Ohio State defensive side of the ball. That's coming up soon as well. We're going to have a ton of coverage for you in the next couple days. And then on Friday, we get down to Atlanta, and then it really gets busy. We're going to have a lot of coverage for you. Buckeyes land about 7:15 p.m. on Friday. Irish land about 5:15 p.m. on Friday. We'll have live coverage from Atlanta Hartsfield Airport of both of those things for you. And then we have a media day on Saturday. We're going to have access to Ohio State and Notre Dame practice on Saturday. And have a lot to talk about there. And then Sunday, head coach press conferences, and then Monday the game, and then a whole bunch of other stuff in between those things as we sort of work our way through what is going to be a very, very busy and hectic final few days of the 2024 college football season. Can't believe the national championship game is already almost here. Can't believe we are almost ready to hit the road down to Atlanta. We're going to have all sorts of coverage for you this week at BuckeyeHuddle.com and at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. You want to get access to our great team of insiders? BuckeyeHuddle.com is the place to do it. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well to make you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.